Good morning, everyone on Facebook Live. Megan and Jen here.
Good morning, everyone.
For Wellness Wednesday. We are getting into some deep topics today because we know that we are in new seasons, approaching new seasons, and lots of changes can come with that. So we are going to like, love, share this video.
Yes,
and
please.
Hey Latrice, thanks so much for tuning in. We are talking new stressors as we approach a new school year for students, for teachers, for college students, as we approach new seasons at work maybe.
Yeah. A lot of people getting new jobs right now.
Yes.
There's so many people who are going into new jobs right now.
Yes. And so we are going to talk. So for those of you, hey John, thanks so much for tuning in. For those of you who are just now joining us, let us know what season of your life that you may be in now. If you are in a new season, if your kids are getting ready to go to school for the first time, if you've just started a new job, if you just got married or you just got in a relationship, just moved into a new home.
Yeah.
All of those are new seasons that you could be entering into that could create new stressors in your life and new stress in your life. And so that's what we're going to discuss with our wellness coach Jen here today. And so we are in a different place. So we're doing something different today. We're at ABC News 4.
We are. And is it okay if I give a little
tell them about
what I
you.
was doing?
Tell them
so
about
the
you.
reason we're here, y'all, is that I do a monthly segment on the ABC4 News local interest.
Live.
Low Country Live. And it's called Wellness Wednesday, which is how we segued into this. That's where we met. And so I'm talking about this topic on Low Country Live today, and I wanted to bring it to you guys in a broader format. So on Low Country Live, we talked about back to school because the Charleston schools, the Berkeley County schools, Dorchester schools are all going back to school next week. But I wanted to talk about this in terms of using the same stress relief strategies that I'm talking to my kids about in terms of going back to school, as I would talk to one of my adult clients about in a new job or in a new situation where they have to interact with new people in particular.
Right. So I'll go first. So for those of you who may be a little shy, I'm such a child, I had to sit on my foot. So for those of you who don't know or do know, I work at a TV station, right? It's an ever-changing business. We always get new people into the newsroom. We get new producers. We get new reporters. It's like an ever-changing newsroom. So my crew in the morning has been pretty consistent, but there's been some changes behind the scenes off camera. And so it's just finding that groove with that new workflow, because somebody else isn't going to be the last person. And sometimes for me, change is not always my favorite thing. I hold on to the way that so-and-so did it before you came along. Yeah. And so that can be not fair to the person that's in the new position. So, hey, Ashley, Gerald, Trey, thanks so much for joining in. So we're talking stressors. And Gerald, I mean, like you are starting a new school year. What's that like for you guys in education? And we're talking about how those things can impact us. And so even when I came to this shift that I'm on now, so I work the early morning shift, that created a new stress in my life because it was a lifestyle change, and it's a forever lifestyle change, like Sunday to Saturday, not just Monday through Friday. It is the 7-day-a-week lifestyle change, and it actually becomes somewhat difficult and stressful. And it's, even though it's been a year, it still feels rather new. The stress that it creates trying to maintain that. But in order for me to be the most productive at work and to put my best foot forward every day, which is a requirement, I have to adjust to it. So for me personally, I found scheduling decreases that stress in my life.
I think you bring up a really good point, because you do have kind of a different work schedule than most of us do, because you have to get up so early in the morning. I imagine that when you talk about it being Sunday through Saturday, what happens is that you can't stay out all night on a Friday or a Saturday night just because you don't have to get up and go to work in the morning.
I know.
You have to keep that same sleep schedule. And I think you said Gerald is going back to school. Gerald, I'm assuming you're a teacher.
He's a counselor.
A counselor.
Yes.
Oh, my mom was a guidance counselor. That's a wonderful profession.
Yes.
And same thing though, we can't just take off. I'm a former professor. We can't just take off the summer and just kind of do whatever and then think that we're going to jump back into that schedule. we have to be cognizant of our body rhythms and not ask our bodies to change either. So many of you might have gotten your kids ready by getting them more into a sleep schedule where they're going to bed earlier and then getting up earlier a couple weeks before school starts. But we need to do that for ourselves as well.
Right. So for you guys out there, we have a number of viewers. Hey, Deanna, Tahara, thanks so much for tuning in. What are some of the stressors in your life? What are new situations in your life that may be creating some stressors for you? Is it new career, new move, moving to a new house, new relationship? We can do a little love talk here,
We can do five love languages and mindful communication.
Yes. Thank you so much. Hey, Daryl. Thank you, Walter. And so we want to know from you guys, what are some of the things and changes in your lives that may be creating new stressors? Another one for me is also, I had to get a new dry cleaner, like where I take my clothes to the cleaners.
Okay.
I only put like a couple of dresses because I don't think it's economical to use the dry cleaners, but that created a new stress in my life because the one I had didn't really work out for me. They messed up one of my dresses, and so I had to find a new one, and that was like, it changed my routine, Yeah. And I didn't like that, and I know that's first world problems or whatever, not first world problems, but in my mind it was finding that new place to go, and so every little thing kind of, when I have changes, sometimes it just creates those new stressors. And as we approach the school year, and though I'm not a student anymore, I'm a student of life. Yeah. What's causing some stressors is these back to school stories.
Oh.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about stress.
I'm going back to school because you guys are going back to school, I gotta do stories because it's time to go. Not complaining in case, hey Kathy, if you watch this later on, just teasing. But no, because I have to do those. It's another thing, on top of my normal workload.
Yeah. Well, I think that, you were joking about something being a first world problem.
Yeah.
But I really would like to hone in on the core of what that stress is. And it doesn't matter where we are in the world, where we are in our economic situation. Dealing with a change is really stressful for a lot of people. Change of even trying to find a new dry cleaner, a new dentist. I know a great one, by the way. I happen to be married to him. And, these kids having to change teachers. I'm an entrepreneur, and so I have to be meeting new people, learning how to interact with new people, constantly pivoting my business to figure out what is going to work best, not only to bring in revenue, but also to be able to juggle my schedule. So there's a great book out there. It's been around for, I think, at least 20 years. It's called Who Moved My Cheese?
Oh.
Who Moved My Cheese? And I'm sorry, I'm not remembering. I wasn't planning on talking about it. I'm not remembering who the author is. Mm-hmm. But it talks about the stress of change, and that if we can learn to embrace change and look at it with curiosity, look at it with acceptance. Mm-hmm. Acceptance is the first step, right?
Right.
That we really can flow through it more easily. I find that mindfulness, the practice of being in the moment, has really helped me with that. As a person who has suffered from anxiety early on, which is why I do what I do today, I help people with their anxiety. Being in that present moment and saying, you know what? Yeah, I am going to have to get a new doctor. For me, that was the most recent change. My doctor, who I really loved, she moved out of state. And I'm like, oh man, how to get a new doctor?
That happened to me one time.
Yeah.
Dr. Spencer Johnson, that's who wrote the book.
Oh, thank you guys. Oh, I love the audience can help us out when the brain's not working.
Okay, I'm turning it down. I'm trying to get to the comments. Sorry, you guys.
This is the beauty of going live, right? So this is something that exemplifies what we're talking about. There's a little change, a little blip in what we're doing here. And we can be like, oh no, that's going to sound terrible. Or we can be like, that's funny, right? And we can be mindful and in the moment and celebrating that moment.
Okay, so John says that having a change in staff, I've recently replaced 2 individuals and I've worked with for years. Adjusting to new personalities and habits is stressful. Oh, John.
Absolutely.
I can relate.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I can relate, my friend. Okay. So, Sunny says that breaking news as soon as I walk into work stresses me out.
Oh, newscaster, yeah.
Yeah, Gerald says she's one of our photographers who works the same shift that I work. So, and then she also has to be on call sometimes. Gerald says that I guess in regards to working in the school, the main stress would be just making sure you have everything in line for that first week. But the key is to be adaptable and not stress over little hiccups that may and will happen.
Yeah. So Gerald, I imagine that you are getting a million emails right now about my son doesn't want to be with this teacher. I just had to send an email
I
that
was
I
that
didn't
student that requested to be in a new class.
Right? I'm the mom, right? I'm the mom who's like, guess what, you guys? You put my daughter in French. She's been in Spanish for 2 years. Let's put her back in Spanish. But as a guidance counselor, having to do that. I want to go back to the personalities, and I'm sorry, I lost track of who has the new.
So John says that he has 2 new people that he's having to adjust to their personalities and habits.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about just change in general when there's maybe a change in the schedule, maybe a blip comes into your life. But personalities, that's one of the things that I really honed in on Low Country Live today. And that is really at the forefront of a lot of the conversations I'm having with clients right now, because the kids are going back to school and they are having to figure out how to deal with new personalities and teachers. I have teenagers, so they have 7 different teachers that they are having to adjust to new personalities. We did meet the teacher night last night, and my daughter, who has the same anxiety that I have, she was going into this going, oh, I don't want to have Miss so-and-so. I don't want to say the person's name. I don't want to have Miss so-and-so. I don't like her. Da, da, da. It ended up that particular teacher has actually gone to another school. My daughter has a different teacher for that class.
She was worried about nothing.
She was worried about nothing.
So that brings up a good point. So every time that I find myself stressed out about a certain situation, I take that back. When I get stressed out about the unknown, it never turns out to be that anyway. Yeah. I've wasted so much time being anxious about something that, 1, I had no control over really to begin with, and then 2, wasn't even going to happen. And communication probably could have alleviated a lot of that stress. And I think communication sometimes, even though I communicate for a living, it stresses me out. Because sometimes I just don't want to talk.
Well, yeah, we get burnt out on talking when we talk all the time.
And I don't want to deal with things.
Yeah.
And so I don't.
Uh-oh.
Hey, Miss Dyson. But that happens. Sometimes I'm just not in the mood to talk, and so I don't, and I shut down. And I realize that that's not an effective form of communicating or maintaining relationships. And I believe I used to work for Target, right? That was my first job out of college. I worked for Target.
Great company.
I was an executive team leader of soft lines and guest experiences.
Wow.
Fanciest way of saying assistant store manager. I was over the front end and the clothes, right? So, anyways, they had a great leadership training program.
I heard they did.
And one thing the biggest thing I took away from that company was effective communicating effectively. And so I realized, especially, now that I've entered my 30s, is to make sure that I speak well and I speak clearly and that people can understand what I'm saying, because if I don't speak in a way that they can understand it and that they can comprehend it, then I am not communicating effectively, and that's going to lead to problems. And so in order to reduce confusion, I try to communicate effectively.
I'd like to address the other side of that, the listening.
Okay. Listening is a skill set that a lot of people are not blessed with.
Yeah. Well, we are not necessarily taught to listen with intention in our culture. We're taught to listen to memorize, but we're not taught to listen and have an analytical bent to it. So I really try to work with my clients and my own children about listening with intention, because how often, you guys, I'm going to put this out to you, do you hear something from somebody and you automatically react? And you
Guilty.
Don't put the thought process into, I wonder, why that person said that. And I wonder also if I might be hearing a tone of voice, or I might be hearing an intention that isn't actually there. I see this a lot, especially as we're in social media. Not that social media is a bad thing, but because we're texting with our thumbs and we're DMing and we're posting, and people are so quick to respond on Facebook. So, well, I guess not so much Instagram, but so quick to respond on Facebook. And they're not thinking about, oh, well, why did this person make this comment? We don't have tone of voice when it's written. I want people to relieve their own stress by trying to be more empathetic about what's going on the other side.
And that's the common theme with each message from you is empathy. And so I think that that's a huge thing. I remember speaking with an employer one time and letting them know, like, because he was kind of cutting me off every time I tried to tell him something. And I was like, hey, you're listening to respond. You're not listening to understand. And everything doesn't warrant a response. And I think that was a hard pill for him to swallow at the time. And it made our relationship better going forward. But I needed him to listen to understand.
And I want to commend you for having the courage to say that.
It was driving me insane. I had no choice.
To somebody who's an authority figure.
Yeah, it was driving me insane. I was not going to be, I couldn't function. It wasn't going to be a healthy work environment if I didn't communicate my frustrations at the moment.
Absolutely.
And so I did in a respectful way.
Absolutely.
But I communicated like, hey, you know what, guy, this isn't working for me.
One of the things I do is I work with companies with their management teams to talk about effective communication, and not only how to communicate so that your employees will listen, but to listen so that your employees will communicate. And that is a skill that is, I think, dying in our society, especially in an employment venue, but also in the schools. So one of my dreams is to be able to go into schools and do that same thing, working with teachers and doing that. I've tried to get into the schools here, and I'm not having much success, but that's something that may come in time, the power of intention, right? Because it is such a stress reliever when we are able to communicate calmly and effectively, but also when we feel like we're being listened to.
So I think that's a good stopping point. Those are going to be our takeaways. So to communicate effectively, communicate intentionally, to be empathetic in our communication. And there was the last thing you just said, and it's escaping me because I went down the list backwards.
That when there's stress relief, not only in knowing that we're being heard and listened to, but to know that we are hearing and listening as well. So when we're talking about new situations, accepting change for what it is, right?
Change. It's inevitable.
Say, okay, change is good. Change is good. I'm going to accept it. I'm going to flex with it, and I'm going to be in the moment, and maybe in the moment with curiosity. That's the mindfulness part. Mindful communication was the second part of what we went into today. And you guys, I want you to know that we don't talk about this beforehand.
No,
we talk
this
about
is an organic conversation.
Yeah, we talk about the title, the topic. But yeah, Megan is so good at what she does. I just want to give her some props.
Thanks.
That I feel like our Facebook Lives are such quality compared to a lot of what I see out there. And that's because of the skills of this young woman. So I want to give her that.
Thank you.
I also, if it's okay, want to remind you guys that this conversation is for you guys. It is not so that we can, for me it is so that I can hang out with Megan.
But I don't mind hanging out too, but we want to make sure that you guys are benefiting from this. So we are trying to create a safe space, so to speak, for you guys to come out and talk on Wednesdays. Wellness Wednesdays is what I hashtagged it. And to just talk about it, because mental health is so important. I think for so long we've been taught to suppress some of our feelings.
Yeah.
And I just think it's 2019. Why do that? I feel like the one thing you're entitled to in life is your feelings. Like, you are entitled to feel how you feel. Now, it's also important to remember how you make people feel. Yep. But you are entitled to your feelings. I don't apologize for having my feelings. I will apologize for how I make you feel. But I don't apologize for having my feelings.
Yeah, and that's part of the control, I can control, what I can't control. So I would really love it if you guys would let us know what you want us to talk about. If you can post in the comments or DM either one of us, it helps me to be able to say, hey, Megan, we got a few comments on this topic. Let's talk about this. And if you're looking maybe to figure out, well, how do I put it into words? Go take a look at peacefullivingwellness.com. That's my online magazine. There are a ton of blogs on there, not just from me, but from other amazing wellness experts, and see how they put it. And then you can let us know. That just kind of can get your creative juices flowing, so to speak.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in to our Wellness Wednesday. We really appreciate you taking the time out to spend some of it with us. And we'll see you next week. If there is something in particular you would like for us to discuss, please let us know. Like she said, send messages or leave it in the comments. And like, love, and share this video.
Like, love, and share
with all your friends and
yes.
family. Happy Wednesday, you guys. Take care.